Even though I'm not known as a man of few words, I tried to listen and to pay attention. As far as music for films, for example, the before I did the music for the Manchurian Candidate, I got some of these crazy sections of it because it was shot completely out of context, but I had read the script, which was fascinating. And I remember I saw one famous scene where they're kind of panning very slowly around the room, and you see all of these women that look like they're at a Savannah tea party with gloves on, talking, having a good time together. And then they pan a little further. Suddenly you see you're in Manchuria at some place where these prisoners have been incarcerated. And you see some of the, I guess, the North Vietnamese and people who were definitely not there to have a picnic. And then you see the poor, where the women have been all dressed up in their costumes because it's a slow pan. Suddenly you see all these soldiers
Hmm.
looking like they're stoned out and sitting there. And then one of them shoots his best friend. And then he's told, well, you won't feel bad about that because we gave you the associative word. And I looked at this thing, and John Frankenheimer, the director, said, what did you think of it? I said, I don't know, man. I thought I was going nuts. It made me feel, are you going to use that in the film, actually? He said, yes. He said, if you felt that you were going nuts, that's exactly what I would like the audience to feel, as if they were taking psychotropic drugs and were being brainwashed. I said, oh. And I was just sitting in my little room at the Montecito where unknown people from New York would come to be in a soap opera and then go back and play Shakespeare. It wasn't exactly the show business capital, to put it mildly.
Mm.
And I looked at it, I said, wow, this is it. He said, yes. And he said, I'd like you to make the audience feel that this was happening to them. And I think you could help it with some music. I said, uh-oh. And then he said, just let me tell you two things. It's not a Chinese war movie. And most important, the film will tell you what to do. And
Mm.
sure enough, it did. So a lot of the music I wrote that was kind of very lyrical and beautiful was to show the main character was more or less doomed by fate, just like the people in Shakespeare plays had written music for, where the character was doomed to begin with. And they showed no matter how he or she struggled, that eventually they would end up tragically because they were on that was their fate, more or less, which is something that appears in literature and life all the time. And I said, wow. So writing it for him, I tried to write something really beautiful that would also be kind of sad. And it worked out fine. And the music I wrote for the everybody going nuts and being brainwashed, I just picked the ugliest, unmusical things I could think of and put them all together. And it was so shocking, I guess, to hear some of that. Some of the critics said avant-garde composer. I said, wow. I had written so much music, and they look at one page and say, that's too traditional, or
Right.
they'd hear it and say it has a beginning, a middle, and end. Or the worst curse of all in the 1950s and 60s and 70s and 80s when I was composing away was audiences enjoyed it or the musicians liked it.
Mhm.
There, by definition, if it was something that only six people could say that they understood,
Mm.
it was worthless. And I understood that. And I have respect for anybody that sits down with that empty piece of paper and says, what am I going to do now?